Welcome to Let's Talk Diz, a show that gives you everything you need to know to help make your Disney vacation as magical as can be in just about 20 minutes. I'm your host, Jeff Coviello. With me each week is Disney Master Sandy from Easy Diz by Instant Impressions Travel Services. Sandy, how you doing this week?
I am doing great, and I am in a cruise mood. I actually just today got my paperwork to have everything set for my preview of the Disney Destiny.
Oh, that's fun. That's a good time. I mean, we know that you are a cruise lover through and through. So tonight, we're going to do a cruise line show, and we've talked a lot about being on your cruise and what that is and how that experience is magical. But today we're going to talk about like something a little bit procedural, right? Like getting on and off the ship can be daunting to some folks. So we're going to give some tips as to how to make that an experience that's not overwhelming.
Yeah, I am a logistics person. I have a background in marketing and event planning. So it's all about understanding those things and being prepared for them. I always say, you can do anything as long as you know. And my daughter calls me the over-explainer. I don't want to arrive and have no idea. And so things like when we're driving to the port, I'll start saying, and when we get on the ship, my plan is to do this and then this. And everybody in my group will say, we get it. We just follow you. And I'm like, well, no, but you shouldn't follow blindly. You should know. And so tonight, we're going to let all of you know.
Well, following blindly is a part of why you're as successful as you are, to be perfectly fair. People trust that you know what you're talking about. You are the Disney master. It's not just hyperbole. It's a real thing. So where do you want to start? Like where is the best place to begin?
I think it's at when do we get there? How do we start? Because we're always asked, do I just show up? And the answer to that is no.
Okay.
One of the things with Disney Cruise Line, and we'll give some generalizations here, is all of the things in preparing for your cruise, things that you can reserve, are based on your Castaway Club status. And Castaway Club is the number of times you've sailed with Disney. So I'm going to say that of the things I'm going to talk about tonight, maybe people will get one or two tips who've sailed before, but I'm really going to be talking about first-time cruisers today who just don't know what to expect. So
Okay.
As a first-time cruiser, 30 days prior to your arrival, you'll be able to go online, complete your online registration, and select what's referred to as your PAT, your port arrival time.
Okay.
And if you're not quite a seasoned Disney cruiser, but you sailed many, many years ago, but not in a long time, you're saying, I never did that. And that's true. If you sailed back in the days of just the Wonder and the Magic, there were no port arrival times. The port building was large enough to house everybody that wanted to arrive nice and early, but that's no longer the case as the ships have gotten bigger. So they give out port arrival windows, and those windows typically, again, talking about our U.S. locations, these can sometimes vary, but they're going to start at 10:30 in the morning, and they're going to go all the way up until about 3:30. 4 o'clock is the final all aboard. Do not cut it that close. They will leave without you.
Yeah,
so
they're not waiting just for you, correct?
Time
Yeah.
is going to be a 15-minute window for you and your party to arrive at the port. Good news, you can always be late as long as it's before that 4 p.m., but you can't be early.
Right. Okay. So what about people are constantly talking, and you and I have had this conversation too, because there's some changes in the documentation that you need to fly, domestically. So what about what you have to have with you as you get on the ship, document-wise?
And that's such a great point, because Real ID, which, as we've said before, Jeff and I are in New Jersey, one of the last states to become compliant in Real ID, and a place where you still might have to give up your firstborn or a pint of blood to get a Real ID appointment.
Right.
You do need Real ID to fly. Like Jeff said, there are some exceptions, but you actually don't need Real ID in order to cruise. Everybody 16 or over, and that's a really important distinction, not adults, 16 and over must have a state-issued photo ID or a federally issued ID. So your 16-year-old, if you're in New Jersey, who isn't driving yet, will need a ID from motor vehicles. You can get a non-driving driver's license or a passport. And when you're sailing on what's called a closed loop cruise out of the US, that means that you begin and end in the same US port. So if you're right from Orlando, Port Canaveral, you start there and end there, you don't need a passport. Starting and ending in Fort Lauderdale, you don't need a passport. Starting and ending in Galveston, you don't need a passport. Starting in Fort Lauderdale, ending in San Diego, you need a passport. And obviously, all of their international cruises, you need a passport. Otherwise, documentation is going to be a legal copy of your birth certificate. So not one that you just made a photocopy of, a nice raised seal one on post 9/11 paper. And that photo ID, a driver's license, or a passport for everybody. You're going to want to keep that handy, along with when you pick that port arrival time, you answered some questions. Who's paying for the room? How are you paying for your extra charges? Who can pick up your child in the kids club? What is the password for that? How are you getting to the port? How are you leaving the port? And when you finish all of those things, it gives you a handy dandy QR code, which is what you'll need when you arrive at that port. So while I do print mine out because I'm always paranoid and may not find my piece of paper, I also take a screenshot and leave it as a photo on my phone, so it's always easily accessible.
I can't overstate how important everything that you just spent the last 2 minutes saying is. And I hope that everybody that's considering getting on a ship, especially the Disney ship, has listened to all of that, because it's such a it's such a hack. Like, it's such an easy way to understand what you need. So go back and listen to the to
And it's
minutes
a
like
tough
three
way to
through
start your
seven.
cruise if you're not prepared and you get there and get turned away.
Yeah. See, this is why we follow you. This is why it does make sense to follow you. But how about getting to the port, right? You mentioned that you need the port arrival time. You mentioned the documents that you need. How about getting there? How are we getting to the port?
So we always talk with our clients, how do you want to get there? You can take your personal car and park it there, of course, for a fee. You can take a car service, you can take an Uber, or you can take Disney transportation. There is a fee, and it only goes from the airport and from Disney resorts. So, if you're sailing out of Galveston and you're staying in a random hotel, they're not going to have transportation. But when you're talking about being in Orlando and sailing out of Port Canaveral, the resorts have it, the airports have it. And that's the one exception to the port arrival time. If you're arriving on their motor coaches, you don't get a port arrival time because they're going to control when you get there.
Got
And
it.
one of the top questions that I hear is, well, I don't really want to take the bus, but I heard I get a better time. And that's simply not true.
A better time to board, you're saying.
A better time to board. And I'm going to give you all a little bit of insight on these port arrival times for a second. So as I said, port arrival times start at 10:30. But here's a unique fact. The ship is not open to board at the beginning of the port arrival times. So when you have those early times, 10:30, 10:45, 11, 11:15, you are arriving, but you are staying in the port. And depending what time you get there, and when I say staying in the port, I'm talking about if you're lucky and you were really early, there's enough seats for you, but you're in this big
It's like
kind of conference room
it's like a
kind of
holding
facility,
area.
for lack of a better phrase. There's no gift shop, there's no vending machines, there are bathrooms and water fountains and chairs.
But you're not on the boat, is what you're saying.
You're not on the boat.
Right.
So you have that port arrival time. Now, when they do open the ship, which is not 100% the same time every day, it has to do with what time did they get in, when did they clear customs, and is everything ready to go? There may have been an issue that the lobby needed an extra rug shampooing, and so they opened 15 minutes late today. It is not 100% carved in stone time. It is usually 11:30. And based on your port arrival time, you are then given a boarding group number. Again, the one exception to that, concierge guests get to board first. And then if you were the 10:30, you might have number 1, 2, or 3. If you were 11:30, you might have group 12. So even though they open the ship at 11:30, you're not getting right on.
So let's go back first because I do want to ask some questions about what to expect at the port. But so you're saying that motor coach from the Disney resort, motor coach from the airport, both available through Disney. Obviously, you can park there as well. You can take your own car there. Is there any other trick to the trade about getting there? I mean, we're talking specifically Port Canaveral, really, probably at this point, because the other ports are not tied to a Disney park.
Correct. So they would all have motor coaches from the airport. And again, you can drive yourself. You can take an Uber, a taxi, any of those options at all of the ports.
Got it. All right. So you started to mention a couple of things about what you can expect at the port when you're there. But let's kind of go through them, right? You mentioned that sometimes there's seats if you're lucky, or you're standing in like an area and there's water fountain and bathroom and things like that. But what else should we expect at the port before we're actually even getting on the ship?
So if you've never cruised before, pulling up at a port is very similar to pulling up at an airport. There are porters waiting outside. And unlike an airport, you are going to give the porters your luggage. That is your only option. They will take those bags. You probably got tags mailed to you with your stateroom number. Maybe they didn't arrive. That happens sometimes. Maybe you might be like me. You have a couple of bags too many from the number of tags they sent. No worries. The porters have plenty of extra tags. They will tag every bag.
Okay.
Keep in mind, whatever you give to the porter, you may not see until after dinner. You may get lucky and get early bags, but they may not come till after dinner. So the key thing that I always say to everybody is you're going to want to take a bag with you on board. Maybe it's a roller board, maybe it's a backpack, but you want to think about medications. I like to swim when I get on board. It's a great time to do things like the aqueduct and the aquadunk before there's a line. So we often board with our swimsuits underneath our clothing. And then if our clothes haven't arrived by dinner time, I want to make sure that I've got clothing and underwear in my bag to get ready for dinner.
So is that essentially like a carry-on size? Is there a size like specificity there for what bag you can carry on?
That's a great question. It has to fit through a scanner like you would find at TSA. So that's really the size. It's not as strict as, here's your suitcase tester to see when you're boarding a plane. But anything, that's why I say you have to give the porters your big bags because they won't fit through. Okay. The other thing that you have to take with you through security is any large liquids. I'm not talking about your shampoo. I'm talking about people bring a case of bottled water. I know people who bring Mr. Pibb, even though soda's included free, they have a favorite soda that's not on board.
Right.
And one of the nice, unique things about Disney is you can bring 2 bottles of wine or 6 beers per adult, but that all goes in your carry-on.
So that's not what you're giving to the porter. You're actually carrying that on.
That is not what you're giving to the porter.
Got it.
Maybe you have a small, if you drove there because you live in driving distance to the port, if you have a small cooler on wheels, that's totally fine to bring in.
Cool.
Okay. To get everything on board.
All right. What else? What else are we looking for at this port? What should we expect?
You're going to check in. That's where they're going to want to see that QR code. They're going to see it to let you in the building. They're going to see it again at the desk when you check in. If you had any trouble uploading your documents, your photos, they're going to help you with that. One advantage possibly to getting an early boarding time is if the ship isn't full, and I will tell you that the ship normally sails 98 to 100% occupancy, but there are some opportunities for discounted upgrades, but there's usually less than 20 rooms available. So that's not necessarily a reason to go early, but if you want one, you're going to do that first thing.
Okay.
If you are there early, they are doing Kids Club. You've already registered for them online, but you can check in at the Kids Club and get their wristband. And then you're going to wait for your boarding group to be called. So this is one of those interesting things that I was talking about. They're going to open the ship typically about 11:30, and the area that you're waiting, I can't say this enough, and I'm not going to mince words here, is going to be mobbed. It is going to be wall to wall people. And you'll see as they start calling the boarding groups, there's more space. Depending on the day, it takes about 25 minutes for that whole area to clear. So some of my clients, if they have a longer cruise or they're talking to me about special needs in their family, those that don't like crowds, those that don't like noise, I say to them, arrive at 12:30. Then you'll breeze right through the process. There's no waiting around because the ship is open and you walk right on.
Right.
So some people, if they want that upgrade or they're doing a 3-day cruise, they're trying to get every minute in possible, they want that really early boarding group. But for some, they don't like standing around and waiting. The other thing is, if you brought a case of water and alcohol and swim gear and you've got all of that carry-on, here's another interesting thing for you. The ship is going to open at 11:30, but your stateroom typically is not available until 1:30. And staterooms are blocked off. You cannot say, oh, I'll just drop my stuff, I won't stay.
Yeah, not how it
That's
works.
not an option.
Got it.
So when you board the ship, which could be as early as 11:30, up until that 1:30, and sometimes it's even a few minutes later than that, you are carrying everything that you've brought with you.
And depending upon how many people are in your group, that could be significant.
It could be, especially when they're little ones that have things but not hands to help carry.
Correct. All right. Well, so then you're on board, right? So we've gotten through. So now we've gone through all of that. We're through the port. We're on the ship. What now?
So that depends on you, and that depends on the ship that you're on. So lunch is open. There is one sit-down option as well as the buffet. And typically you'll also find all of kind of those fast food options where you can walk up and grab something and sit. Again, we often run right to the pool if we want to do the aqueduct before there's a line. It's a great time to go to the spa. If you want a tour of the spa, they're doing those. If you want a single pass to the rainforest room, and I'll drop the link to our other episode where I give all the great virtues of the rainforest room.
That's right.
You can buy a length of cruise pass in advance, but you cannot buy single days in advance, and they are limited in how many they sell. So I usually run right for the spa. They also do some giveaways. They are not general giveaways that everybody gets. You fill out a raffle card, and then you have to come back and be present when they pull the raffle. I take the tour often and skip the raffle. Just a little pro tip there.
Sure.
It's a great time to go to all of the different kids clubs because they are all in what we call open house mode. So you can't drop your children, but you can see what's there. So depending which ship you're on, maybe your kids aren't old enough or are too old for the club that has Star Wars or that has princesses. This is a good time to see it all. Depending on your child, this is a great time to get them comfortable with the atmosphere with you. Show them where everything is, what their choices are, where the bathrooms are. It's also the time that if you have a child in the nursery, you are limited to 6 hours of nursery time in advance, but on board, any additional hours are fair game. So if you wanted more hours, head right to Small World Nursery and start seeing what's available and sign up for those extra hours.
Okay. What about like if you wanted to make any changes for your party, right? We got the rotational dining, the timing, stuff like that. What about if you wanted to make changes? Is that something we do as soon as we get on board? How does that work?
Definitely. It's not going to be as soon as you get on board because the dining changes and the adult dining have a specific time and location. So you'll have to look in your navigator. It's usually about 1 o'clock. Sometimes it's 2 o'clock, but find it's listed in there or any of the guest services cast members. That's a popular thing to do. If making the change from late to early or early to late, or trying to get one of the reservations that they held back at Palo or Remy, Enchante or Lumiere is a top priority, I suggest that you get online 20 to 40 minutes before that opens.
Got it.
People will line up early and there's a limited amount of space. They do work on a waitlist system for all of that. If you stand online and you get to the front and they're like, sorry, we have no brunches, put yourself on the wait list. Things happen, they will definitely call you, but they work hard to try and accommodate everybody there.
The interesting piece about what you've described here so far, right, is that it's really hectic, just like any other travel, when you're getting there and you're trying to make sure you have everything you need and you're holding on to the things that you need to hold on to, but you're giving your bags to the host folks and you're seeing what your options are. And then it's like almost like you get washed over with just like the magic, and then you're on your cruise for a couple of days, right? And
everybody's different. Some people are more go with the flow. Some first timers are like, whatever I got, and the
right,
rest I'm gonna do. And they get on board and they're sitting poolside or watching the Jumbotron, and they're not doing any of this.
right. Right.
There are also people who have sailed 20 times who aren't doing any of this, because as I mentioned, the more you cruise, every 5 cruises, you jump a level in that castaway status, and you get to book earlier and earlier.
Got it.
So, sometimes that happens where people have everything they want, or you know what? Do I love going to brunch at Palo? I do. If I skip it, one trip, is it the end of the world? It's not.
Right.
But again, everybody's different. I have a friend who would eat in the adult dining room every night if she could, and especially on some of the short cruises, she goes to that dining change time and gets those extra nights, or gets one more night and put on the wait list for one more night. People change plans all the time. Just like you're trying to get into things, some people try to get out of things.
Sure.
So don't give up.
All right. So we talked about getting there. We talked about getting on. We're not going to talk about while you're on, because we have done a couple of shows about that. But the last thing we're going to talk about tonight that we're going to give some time to is getting off, right? Is the debarkation part, right? That's a thing all in and of itself.
Vacation ending, I don't care what vacation you're on. When your vacation comes to an end, it stinks. There's no other way to put it. Everybody's sad. It's hard. But I think out of every vacation I take, the worst vacation endings are always on a cruise. Sorry, Disney Cruise Line, I have to say it. Keep in mind, again, you want to talk about the magic behind the curtain. We were talking about that you're all lining up starting at 10:30 in the morning. You want to get on that ship. But you're watching the stragglers. Maybe you arrive at 10:05 for your 10:30, and you're still seeing the very last stragglers getting off that ship.
Right.
They have to get thousands of people and their luggage off the ship, through customs, strip every bed, clean every room, ready. And they have almost no time to do it. That's why your room isn't ready the minute that you board.
Sure.
But in order to make that work successfully and get all of you, if you're headed straight to the airport in a timely way, the last day can be a little tough. There's not really a last day of your cruise. I say to people, it's breakfast and get out. So it's not a cruise day in my mind.
Right.
But it really starts the night before, depending on your sailing and when you're getting into port and where. And this is all done in coordination with customs, because there's some magic that happens probably before you're waking up, depending on how early a riser you are in the port that you're in. So on the last night of your cruise, probably 95% of the cruisers will put their bags out. They need to be out in the hall between 10 and 11 at night. They take those backstage down an elevator, and early in the morning, they are unloading them into the port for you. They are being scanned by customs and through security. So that bag that was your carry-on when you got there is going to be your bag to get off the ship.
Right.
And Pretty much every cruise, you find one person still in their pajamas because they put everything in the bag. You cannot get it back once it's gone, because it is among thousands of bags. So you're going to need your pajamas, any personal cosmetics and things like that, and then your outfit for the next morning, and shoes. You want to put something on your feet. And you're all laughing at me, but as you're packing your bag the last night, you're going to remember me, and you're going to have shoes to walk out in and be very happy.
So you put that out, you said between 10 and 11 the night before. And then the morning of when you're about to get out, what's the procedure? You said there's breakfast and
There is
then
breakfast, and breakfast is done in a couple of ways. So you can sit in the dining room. If you had early seating, brace yourself. Breakfast is 6:45 a.m.
okay.
If you had late seating, breakfast is 8 a.m.
Got it.
The buffet is open, so you can go at any time in that range. It is very different from any breakfast buffet you've been to all week. It is very basic. This is not a time, again, they don't want you spending a lot of time. They want to feed you and get you off the ship. At 7 a.m., you'll hear an announcement for what they call walk-off. If you don't have any large bags and you just know that you've got to get off that ship quickly, you cannot put your bags out the night before and walk off with them. There is no porter to help you. The elevators are small, so don't do walk-off with your big bags unless you absolutely have to. I will share a quick story, even though I'm long-winded tonight. Sorry.
It's okay.
I did walk off once. It was actually on our preview cruise of the Disney Wish, because I got off the Wish to the airport and was with a group on an Adventure by Disney river cruise, all in under 24 hours.
Wow. Then I guess we have such pity for you at that
And
point.
so I had to walk off, or I would miss my only international flight that would get me there on time.
Well, there you go. So
And
makes
so
sense.
being on a preview cruise and then gone in Europe for 10 days, I had a lot of bags. But it took multiple elevators till there was enough space for me, my friend that was helping me, and my bags to get down. So walk off is tough. That starts at 7 a.m. Again, that can be delayed. The ship has to clear customs.
Got it.
If you are a non-U.S. resident, you will get a letter in your room about a separate customs meeting before that 7 a.m. clearance. Everybody has to be off the ship by 9:30. Usually about 7:20, they start calling luggage groups. So just like you had luggage tags to get on the ship, you'll have luggage tags to get off your ship. You might be Mickey or Minnie or Donald or Pluto or Tinkerbell. It's the section of the ship you were in, and it's how you'll find your luggage in the port. They call you by group, and they do it for a couple of reasons. It helps in keeping things organized down in the port. But what I've learned in traveling out of 9 different ports with Disney Cruise Line is if it is not one of their regular home ports, many of the ports are not large enough to accommodate all of the luggage for the ship. So let's say my group isn't called and I walk off and I get into the luggage pickup area. There's only room for 3 characters worth of luggage at a time. And so my stuff isn't there.
Makes sense.
Port Canaveral's large enough. You can generally find it all. But again, everybody will be off by 9:30. And none of the services are open that morning. So the pools are covered in nets. The kids' club's doors are locked tight. You can't go get ice cream. You can't do any of the fun stuff that morning because, again, they need to turn over the ship and they're trying to really encourage you to leave. Most people will be off by 8:30 to 9 o'clock. 9:30 is really those last stragglers. And then they recommend flights no earlier than noon. That gives you enough time to get back to the airport and be there that 2 hours prior to check your luggage in. And just like that, it's come to an end.
It's all over. Well,
but I will give you one more last tip of the very important thing you should do if you haven't done it by that last morning.
Okay.
In your Disney Cruise Line app, you can book your next cruise with a 10% discount. You don't have to commit to what day you want to travel. You just select what we call a placeholder, give them a small deposit, and that locks in that 10% deposit for any sailing in the next 2 years. But if you don't do it by the time you walk off the ship, you will be off of the intranet. And so, like, you can't even do it on the bus to the airport. You no longer will have access to that system. You can always cancel and get your deposit back, but it's a great way to save on your next cruise, because I promise, no matter how much you plan and do, you didn't do it all, or there's a different ship that has some unique things, and you are going to want to sail again.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time today, because this is such a procedure-filled process, and people do get overwhelmed, and I think you've laid it out very, very clearly for everybody. I know we were a little bit longer tonight than we normally are, but there's so many things to know, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise. I think it's really going to help some people.
Thanks so much.
And that's a wrap this week on Let's Talk Diz. If anyone you know could benefit from this or any show, please share, have them like, and subscribe. And don't forget to reach out to the folks at Easy Diz by Instant Impressions Travel Services for any Disney destination planning. Make it a great week. And as always, keep making memories.